be very, very clear. The current model and the current strategy of the Democratic Party is an absolute failure.
Draft Bernie just put itself on the progressive scene in a huge way. We were in there in force with our Draft Bernie signs all over the place, made a huge impression on Bernie, got Bernie's attention, and at the end, the clincher, we got Roseanne Tomorrow of NNU's endorsement and support.
When we stand together, there is nothing that will stop us. Thank you all very much.
I want to thank all the Draft Bernie people. I'm with you. Nurses, are we with them? I always say, heroes aren't made, they're cornered.
The nurses union stood with Draft Bernie. That's a huge endorsement. We are one step away from Bernie.
It's a historic day. Bernie Sanders was able to see just how much force there is, that we are here today starting a new party that can replace a corporate party, that can replace the Democratic Party, a People's Party, actually represents us.
Draft Bernie, or People's Party, stood up and said, we need to move on away from the Democratic Party.
And I'm super proud of the Draft Bernie team who, spoke their case, made their voices heard in there, because ultimately, I believe we don't need to hear Bernie. Bernie needs to finally hear us.
I love Bernie, but you know one thing about a revolution? When the flag falls, somebody picks up that flag and they keep on running. And that's what we have to do.
We need a party for the people. And I guarantee you this, we will be a force to be reckoned with.
Just 4 months ago, Draft Bernie was nothing but an idea. Today, it's a major presence at the helm of a rapidly growing movement for a new party that actually represents the people as opposed to corporations.
Disassemble everybody from the one direction, so the players may scare. Roll on the way, but you gotta know that I'm a fool, always open there. It's filled with thieves, lamping off my dreams. I'm only here for one reason, a step between. It's filled with thieves, lamping off my dreams.
Welcome once again to the Radical Imagination. I'm your host, Jim Vrettos, and I'm a sociologist at John Jay College here in New York. 55 years ago, in 1962, a political manifesto was written primarily by a young progressive student activist, Tom Hayden, and a small number of University of Michigan students. It came to be known as the Port Huron Statement, and the student activist movement, Students for a Democratic Society, was born. It became an embodiment of feelings for a new movement of young people during the 60s, trying to work, create, and survive outside the system, developing and living in a counterculture, hoping to dramatically transform the dominant culture. It attempted to establish a living, ongoing dialogue with society to lay out a radical vision for a better future, a classic statement of principles by the new left of the time, and an agenda for a generation. It issued a non-ideological call for participatory democracy, both as a means and as an end, based on nonviolent civil disobedience and the idea that individual citizens could help make social decisions determining the quality and direction of their lives. It boldly stated that the imperative task for publicly disinherited groups was to demand a Democratic Party responsible to their interests. The peace and civil rights movements needed to and did challenge the so-called peace and civil rights credentials of otherwise liberals, threatening and actually running candidates against them. In short, they consciously built a base for challenging the loci of power, the two-party duopoly of their time, the power elite, the prison military-industrial complex. Now, the apathy felt by so many young people, in particular in those days, was at first subjective, a felt powerlessness of ordinary people, the resignation before the enormity of events. The subjective apathy was encouraged by the objective American situation, the actual structural separation of people from power, from relevant knowledge, from pinnacles of decision-making. The American political system was, in fact, not the democratic model which its glorifiers wanted people to trust and believe in. In fact, it frustrated democracy by confusing individual citizens, paralyzing police and policy discussion, and consolidating the irresponsible power of military and business interests. Today, 55 years after Port Huron, we again have a largely youth-based campaign challenging the militarism, the structural violence, the racism, the patriarchy, poverty, and greed of an America that is still grappling with many of the same issues and concerns Port Huron identified. It would be hard to dispute that these same issues continue to fester in even greater complexity and destructiveness today. They demand change in even greater urgency than was the case 55 years ago. Now, the left has at times famously done a masterful self-destructive job when faced with that challenge toward change, as various parochial factions and schisms have been allowed to dominate their message. And yet the discussion has to continue among the great majority of the American population who find their voices and aspirations stifled by the traditional politics as usual debate. On the Radical Imagination show, we're devoting 2 shows to what is fast becoming a key movement of our time, the Draft Bernie for a People's Party campaign. We've invited Michael Lucido, who is the chairman of the New York State Draft Bernie for a People's Party campaign, to be a guest on our first show. And following Michael will be Nick Brana, who is the National Political Outreach Coordinator and founder, with Cornel West, of the Draft Bernie for a People's Party, and he will be on our second show. Now, before we welcome Michael in person, let's play a couple of short clips of the campaign and also a video musical.
To the Battle of New Orleans at the end of the early British wars. The young land started growing, the young blood started flowing, but I ain't a-marching anymore. For I killed my share of Injuns in 1,000 different fights. I was there at the Little Big Horn. I heard many men a-lying, I saw many more a-dying, but I ain't a-marching anymore. It's always the old to lead us to the wars, always the young to fall. Now look at all we've won with the saber and the gun. Tell me, is it worth it all? For I stole California from the Mexican land, fought in the bloody Civil War. Yes, I even killed my brothers and so many others, but I ain't a-marching anymore. For I marched to the battles of the German trench in a war that was bound to end all wars. Oh, I must have killed 1 million men and now they want me back again, but I ain't a-marching anymore. It's always the old to lead us to the wars, always the young to fall. Now look at all we've won with the saber and the gun. Tell me, is it worth it all? For I flew the final mission in the Japanese skies, set off the mighty mushroom roar. When I saw the cities burning, I knew that I was learning that I ain't a-marching anymore. Now the labor leaders screaming when they close a missile plant. United Fruit screams at the Cuban shore. Call it peace or call it treason, call it love or call it reason, but I marching anymore. I ain't marching anymore.
That was Phil Oakes. I ain't marching anymore. And Michael, welcome so much for being here. It's really an honor, I'm so glad you're here. You're a musician, and you're the you're the New York State coordinator of the Draft Burning Movement.
Yep, New York State co-lead. We have another leader named Suzanne Myron out of Long Island. Right. So she helps a lot with the city, and then I do more upstate stuff as I live in Beacon, New York.
Beacon, upstate a little bit. And again, we played Phil Oakes, and you're a musician. How is your music, or has your music been part of this political development?
Sure. So for me, I play in an experimental punk rock band called Ourselves, and when me and my two other best friends, Mike and Dean, when we started the band, we were tired of hearing all the regular punk rock music that was out there, and we wanted to make something that we enjoyed playing. And we went into it not really caring if other people would like it too much. But we made music that was special to us and that we enjoyed playing. And then through playing that live in the shows that we put on, other people liked it, and that's just a bonus at that point, right? If you're playing something that you love and then other people like it,
absolutely, everybody
wins. As far as being political in any of our music, we're really not.
But the idea that you sort of stood in the gap, in the breach for yourselves, and then it resonated to a lot of people. I mean, in a sense, you're hoping that'll happen too with the Bernie
Absolutely,
campaign,
yes.
right? So, and how did you connect with that?
Okay, so I'm a big fan of Jimmy Dore. He has, I don't know if you're familiar with Jimmy Dore. He's out in California. He has his own YouTube channel. He's part of the Young Turks organization as well. And he had a video on with our founder, Nick Brana, talking about the campaign and the organization. And as soon as I saw that, I just really got fired up. You know, it was about 4 months ago, so shortly after the election, when, when the election happened, I know all of us on the progressive end of things were very let down and kind of felt a little defeated and really had no direction. There was a lot of things going on at the time. And I saw Draft Burning, and it just made so much sense to me.
It resonated.
It absolutely resonated with me.
And you contacted Nick?
Yeah, so what happened is because I'm a musician and I have a big network of other friends who are musicians, what I decided to do was throw a petition drive fundraiser event. So I got a bunch of local bands together, and we went to a local venue, which is a pizza place in Poughkeepsie, New York. And the owner's name is Pat, and he's a big Bernie guy. And so when I told him about my idea, he was on board right away. And so from there, we started booking the bands and organizing the show, and it was on April 7th. And at that point in time, I had only gone online to the Draft Burning website and submitted a form to volunteer, and no one had gotten back in touch with me to do anything. But then I saw that Draft Burning started posting on Facebook. So what I did was I took the link to the event and I posted it as a comment to one of their posts. And then right away, within seconds, I had like 4 people reaching out to me like, hey, you want to volunteer? Let's get you on board. And then they threw me into a group chat along with a bunch of other people who are organizers. They sent me some documentation, and so I got on board as a regional lead real quick. And so that was very exciting. We had the show, and it was a huge success. We got a ton of petition signatures. I even made a baked Bernie cookies with his face on them. Right. And I made incredible. I made ghost pepper brownies, and I called them Feel the Burn brownies. I know it's very
what an incredible story. Movements get started like this. I mean, this is an incredible story. The connection is there. People resonated. And again, why do you think there's such, I mean, you're in the middle now, and I did this for the introduction. I think this has the possibility of being the most promising, most powerful movement of our time. I mean, and you're in the middle of this now. I mean, how can you explain that? What is his appeal? What are you attempting to accomplish, first of all, in the draft campaign?
Sure. So we believe that all parties right now are corporate parties, and they don't represent the people.
Duopoly. Right.
Correct. It's a
Which is
duopoly, and it gives you the illusion of choice
Right.
Between two parties, and it's a broken system that has repeatedly failed us over and over again. And the main goal of Draft Bernie for a People's Party is to take Bernie Sanders, okay, take all the support that he had during the primary, okay, all those people, and take that base, that huge base of people, to start a new major party.
Tens of millions of people.
Tens of millions of people.
Right.
You know, because right now, people are begging for authenticity more than anything. Especially my age group. We grew up with politicians, for the most part, talking about the same thing over and over again, just bland. And then, you know, out of nowhere, Bernie comes out, starts talking about things like, you know, universal health care and not having to choose between paying for your prescriptions or keeping your electricity bill on, you know. Whereas we all grew up thinking, you know, that's not what politics is about. It's about the Democrats versus the Republicans, and then one of them wins, you know. And
He was the only politician that really overwhelmingly has the support of your generation.
Yeah, and
Right,
I think it's mostly because he ran a policy-based campaign, whereas Hillary Clinton's campaign was, I'm not Donald Trump. It was void of any
Negative,
specific policy. It was bland, and it was a negative attack ads against Donald Trump. And that's because she's bought and paid for. So you can't, like Bernie, go out against the corporations and the people who exploit the working class. Okay, when those are the guys that are paying you, right?
Absolutely, absolutely.
And so that's why I think Bernie has so much support, because he's authentic, and when he speaks, millions of people show up, you know, and to hear him talk. Whereas you don't have that for other politicians, you know. And there's a moral, you know, attachment to that. Whereas
moral integrity and the taking the stand, and that you realize is truly honest. And it's I think it's obvious too to others as well, and from all age groups, but in particular the young people have gravitated toward this movement. Over 90% or support. Yeah. That's unbelievable. Now, how are you going to? Okay, so what are the logistics of this here? This is 4 months old.
4 months old.
Okay, and what are you attempting to do at this point?
So right now, we are currently collecting as many petition signatures as possible, because, as Nick Brana says, this is going to make a huge impact when it's presented to Bernie.
Okay.
To try to get as many people on board as possible. We're also right now working on coalition building with other progressive groups, and then we are also pushing for Bernie to do a town hall to really talk about the issues.
In
right
August,
now.
You're hoping?
We're hoping for August, yes.
Okay.
But we've had the support of a lot of Bernie surrogates from the primary, such as Dr. Cornel West. Yeah. Right now we have Josh Fox, Jimmy Dore.
Well, I've talked to Nick also the last couple of days, so we're getting some other people on board. Carl Hart, professor at Columbia, is on board, and we're going to have Carl on the show in a couple of weeks, and Jim Gilligan, and we've also contacted Reverend Barber's people as well, the Poverty Initiative, the Cairo Center. So there's a lot of people out there that really, when the word gets out, I think it's just a matter of getting that word out. Boy, I mean, again, Bernie is in is it a tough position? Well, he's been going around, trying to reform, is that the word, the Democratic Party, to try to push it in a more progressive way. And as you said before, that really has never worked historically. I mean, true, I mean, these progressive attempts, there's many on the left that still believe that can be done. And then, of course, you're on the side here. Let's have a new party. So give us an idea of the debate that's going on there.
Sure. So the debate is essentially to really put all our eggs in one basket and reform the Democratic Party, or take all those eggs and put it in another basket and try to create a new party. And that's what Draft Bernie is about.
So either they're going to finally and forever go that route, the progressive route, which there are, you know, some histories for that, but they've never fully embraced it totally, right? They've always sort of waffled here and there.
Correct.
And have kept their power by convincing those that, well, you know, teasing us that we might go this way and we're better than the lesser evil, right?
Yeah.
All right, so either that's going to happen, or
we create a new party and we take all those people who really didn't want to vote for Hillary Clinton, okay, but voted because they were afraid of Donald Trump.
Right.
All those people from the primary who voted for Bernie, but once he didn't get it, they couldn't stand to vote for Hillary Clinton, so maybe they voted for Donald Trump. And then you have all the people who maybe voted Green,
right,
and all the people who didn't vote because they were so disgusted with the whole thing. So you take that whole group of people and you transplant that into a new party that really represents their interests, okay? That's a winning idea.
that would be a majority party
It'd be a majority
of
party.
the Americans.
Let's look at it right now. We have
give us the numbers.
we have Bernie right now making every attempt possible to bring people into the Democratic Party. Okay?
I know, I mean, we'd love to have him here and ask him this question.
Yeah.
But, all right, why do you feel he's doing that at this point still?
I think that he honestly believes that that's the best way to do it, and I think
it's still
he's been
okay.
to give him. He's probably worked with these people as colleagues for 30 years,
right.
And
okay.
The way I have to think about it is like if I work for the same company for 30 years, and you have all these ties, and and then one day somebody asks you want to come start your own business, and
right.
there's a lot of unknown and apprehension that goes into that. If you were to leave your old company that you worked for, so that's the way I have to look at it.
Even though he's been an outsider in that company.
Correct.
No, I get what you're saying.
Yeah, so
it makes sense.
That's the easiest way
right.
for me to try to
makes sense.
Justify it, I guess.
Well, makes sense. Yeah.
But we have Donald Trump in the White House who does horrible things. Obviously, he's not keeping up on any of his campaign promises, on what he said for his base of supporters. So you have Donald Trump in the White House. You have Bernie making every attempt possible to bring people into the Democratic Party, yet it's hemorrhaging.
The Democratic Party, in fact, is losing membership. That's and what is it down to now? 28%.
It's 27%.
27%, and what Republicans have what? In other words, what's the rates of independents now? 40%.
I don't know the
Something
actual
like
number.
that.
I
okay.
just said it before, but I can't.
Yeah.
Now
No.
off the top of my head.
No. So, but more Americans are independents.
Correct.
Than either Democrats or Republicans at this point.
So it doesn't look like the Democratic Party at this point is wanting to change whatsoever.
And majority of Americans seem to find the Democratic Party even more distasteful, which is hard to imagine.
I know.
But they do
than
more
the
distasteful
Republican
than Republicans and Trump. So that's a hell of a situation. And
exactly.
one has to admire Bernie for his tenacity. But as you're talking, in a sense, it's theoretically and concretely it's a win-win for progressives, because either, right, we trust Bernie, he's got the integrity, either he's going to somehow, this ultimate magician is going to make the Democratic Party truly progressive, right, which we're betting is not going to happen, or the other option is to start the old.
And he gets fed up, and he goes to
right.
where the voice, and listens to the voice of the people, the majority, because the majority of people right now, I believe, that want nothing to do with the Democratic Party, because they've shown over and over again that they don't speak for the working class people. They're actually against the working class people.
And the numbers that you guys have worked out is just incredible, because even if you got half, right, half the Democrats and half the independents to join, that would make you again majority of Americans.
A major major party.
The major party.
And the goal would be to try to make sure that the Democrats can't hit the threshold to get into the debates.
Well, then there's all sorts of problems, and I'm sure what they'll do is all kinds of fear mongering will develop. But while you can't,
and that's the thing is, like, once even when a progressive gets close to winning in the office, then they change the rules, and make sure that they don't win, like just what happened in California.
Exactly, and again creating this fear that God, you can't go to Bernie because that means another 4 years of Trump. And again, either progressives have to have the backbone and say, we're not going to be fooled again. And that was the Phil Oakes song, Yeah. What is all this accomplish? The same old, same old. And we need to really have a progressive movement that puts a brake on the cycle of violence and begins to roll back the power elite, the military industrial complex, which neither party is doing, right?
Yeah.
So it's a huge task and a huge transformation of America at all kinds of levels, moral and spiritual and economic and political.
There's a lot of fear mongering that goes on, and I think that we need, I got involved because I started educating myself on the issues. Then eventually I saw that there was very little difference between neoliberals and Republicans on who they get paid by and their policy. And I think once we're able to make the distinction that, whether we choose left or right, we're almost getting the same thing. It's, very, very, very close.
The same policies gets perpetuated economically, politically. The wars get escalated. There's not, in a sense, there are some differences, yes, but overall, the trajectory of the policies are the same. Because, again, both parties are controlled by essentially the same people who have the same agenda. Maybe it's, I don't know, different sorts of drone flights or different sorts of, I don't know, but people getting killed. Whether it's with more sophisticated, more nuanced, you get what I'm saying, right? So, you were saying before the show, you've gone through a certain spiritual transformation too, and I think it's so important. Because
and that's really what sparked me becoming active and learning and trying to educate myself on politics. It really started a little over 3 years ago, and I wasn't going down the right path, I guess you could say, and where I really wanted to be as a human being. And so then I decided to make a change in my life. And so,
do you think it was in part due to some of the external choices you had growing up in America? If you will, the lack of moral integrity or whatever you want to call it to make it in America. I mean, was that part of it?
Yeah.
I'm a sociologist, so we tend to look at these larger forces that turned you off and just gave no meaning in a sense.
My parents, my mom, my dad, they did the best they could.
Right.
And I don't blame them for anything of any kind of negativity I've ever had in my life. They did an amazing job, and they're amazing parents. But for whatever reason, things that happened in my life just made me a negative person and selfish, and didn't really care for people, or and I just
sounds like our president. But no,
yeah. And so
the system here,
I was just I was, like I said before we started the show, I was soul sick. And I needed to do some soul searching to really figure out who I was as a person, without just being so negative. And so that led me to becoming a vegan. It started with animals, spiritually. I made a moral decision that said, these animals, they're the least represented, creatures on our planet. And I had to think about it. Like, I didn't think twice before I ate a burger or chicken or anything, but that was once a life. So I spiritually, that bothered me. So I'd made a decision to stop consuming animal products, and that's eating and purchasing anything that was tested on animals, leather, things like that. And so I've been vegan now for over 3 years, and through that, I developed a love for people again, and When Bernie started with his campaign and he started talking about these issues, it just really, really affected me, you know? And it got me fired up and it made me go and do research on issues, you know, and find out how badly, you know, the working class, which, you know, my parents came from, you know, middle class folks, and, you know, it just, it affected me, and that's why I decided to start getting involved in politics. And then you know, Bernie Sanders, you know, he just, I think he has awoken a lot of people.
So it's more this, you would say, a spiritual transformation of the soul. We're not talking about any sort of religious tenet or denomination.
Yeah, I don't practice an organized religion, but I believe that principles, you know, are what you base your life off of.
Right.
You know, what feels good and near.
Right.
Is what's most important. I have nothing against organized religion whatsoever. It's just
doesn't speak to you. And were a lot of people, friends of your generation, feeling the same way, do you think, that you were hanging out with?
I'd say people, you know, after this past year, a lot of people are starting to wake up as well, and it's a beautiful thing to see.
So when you say, and I find that really interesting, beautiful term in a sense, soul sick. Is America soul sick?
I think, and it's interesting you asked me that because I watched the video with Dr. Cornel West on this show, and he said something that really affected me. He said that, you know, we're all morally bankrupt. America's morally bankrupt right now, and we're
moral amnesia. He also does it very morally constipated. He has a lot of connections on that. But
yeah, everyone's for sale, you know, and I think we need to get back to more community and loving one another before anything else. Politics, religion aside, you know, if we can't have unconditional love for one another, okay, we'll never be able to live up to our full potential, and I truly believe that.
I think what you're just saying is so important, and I think for any movement to succeed, political, economic, any of them, that component has to be a major one. And we were talking before the show, and I've had a number of, and hope to eventually have Reverend Barber on the show in person, but I've had a number of his associates from Union Theological and Poverty Initiative, the Cairo Center. And again, so much of this is a moral revolution that's needed.
A lot of people,
moral transformation.
A lot of people forget that during the primary, the Pope invited Bernie Sanders to come and speak about moral economics, you know, a Jew from Brooklyn.
Well, I've got to get into, look, I mean, is Bernie comfortable with that sort of stuff? Because I think this is needed. I mean, he is, as he's mentioned, agnostic. He is a secular, as you point out, a Jew from Brooklyn. I mean, he doesn't talk much about it, right? He has mentioned certain connections to his own family experience, the Holocaust, but do you think he feels very comfortable in talking this sort of language? Not that he necessarily has to, but somebody if the progressives are going to make a difference, don't you think? This has got to be part of the discussion.
Absolutely, you're right. I don't think he's uncomfortable talking about that.
Okay.
You know, because I think if you're a moral person and you have love in your soul, I don't think talking on a spiritual or religious level is going to bother you whatsoever. You know.
I think you're right. Yeah. Well, we'll see as that develops, because I think that's such an important. And again, he does speak of that with the idea of transforming the economy in a moral way, and of course, Reverend Barber does that as well. And we've had so many people on the show, James Gilligan, the psychiatrist, who talks about we need to create not only, we create more loving, nurturing people by having more nurturing, loving social structures. And that means taking care of people economically, make sure they have the opportunities and so on, decent wages and creative work and so on. And so Bernie does speak to that, as we all know. So. So again, we should talk about the recent, yesterday's defeat Democrats. What do you make of that with Ossoff and?
They said it was the most expensive seat for
57 million. I don't know how much. So there we go again. The corporate parties throwing all this money, and yet you know what's going to.
Yeah,
Trump is going to say C.
I haven't done too much research on Mr. Ossoff. Because I obviously I'm very busy in my own bubble with Draft Bernie, but I did pay a little bit of attention, and he wasn't a progressive.
That's what I was going to get to.
He's a vanilla
not really
Democrat,
offering the
and
sort of choice.
He wasn't really outspoken. He was quiet, and he was a centrist, and I just think. In this day and age, people are just craving, authenticity and something unique. And when you just go out there and you're just, normal Democratic talking points, I don't think you're exciting anyone, And then when you have a strong Republican, who plays the game of, twisting their words and identity politics, I think
they'll win.
They're just going to win. They're going to overpower you. And if right now I think America's progressive. America's progressive, and I think they want to hear progressive policy talked about.
Make that point. How do we know that? And I know in your literature, in the Draft Bernie literature, that point is made over and over again. I happen to agree with it. Share that.
Percentages are very high on things like equal pay for men and women, getting money out of politics, health care for all, $15 minimum, livable minimum wage, $15 minimum wage.
One payer health.
Single payer health care. You talk to folks, and Bernie's proved that, going out to Western Virginia, talking to coal miners, getting them to come to his side and talk about universal health care and saying, this gentleman voted for Trump. Now he's saying, I want universal health care. Americans want this stuff. And I think there's a lot
guaranteed annual income? Yeah. Do you think he's ready to go that far?
I'm not sure, but I think it's something that needs to be talked about.
Something absolutely needs to be addressed, and it's a logical continuation of that progressive agenda, in a sense. You're going to be having a convention where you're going to be drawing up.
Sure.
What?
So that's later in the phases of Draft Bernie, but right now we're working on the petition signatures to get to that point. So once Bernie does say yes and he comes on board, we're going to have a founding convention where we'll develop a party platform.
How is that going to happen? Again with SDS, participatory democracy. What sort of structure have you thought of that will enable as many people to have some input on this?
Yeah, we want to be inclusive, and that's why we're doing so much coalition building right now with other progressive groups, because it's important that everyone does have a seat at the table. The Democrats say that. We think it's important. Very few people have a seat at the table on the Democrat side. But for us, we really want a true progressive platform. So through our coalition building, we'll be able to have enough groups on board to bring everyone to the table and say, this is the direction we'd like to go in.
And more or less have a majority agreement. That's
correct.
The hope, that's the wish, that's the necessity.
So what's going to benefit the working class? And that's going to be first and foremost.
And the hope is that egos can
come together. We're all human, but
and
I think there's a lot of unity on these topics. And once you get people in a room together who are, for the most part, on the same page, I think it's going to come together effortlessly.
And the drug war?
And the drug war, and the war on drugs.
And mass incarceration.
Yeah.
Stop and frisk. I mean, there's a lot of things when you get into some of the more specific details. What is that progressive message? What unifies us? I think you were speaking about that earlier, the love of life in a sense. And going into what's inside, right?
It's what feels right.
What feels right.
What feels right.
It's not nuclear physics here, right?
Yeah.
It's
and that's why it's for me. It's not like a
pretty
left
simple.
thing or a right thing. I think it's more of a common sense thing. That, you know, as far as policy is concerned, you know, what benefits the working class people? Why can't we invest, you know, back into the people, free education, free health care, you know, so those people can get good jobs and pay plenty of taxes like the government wants us to, right?
And live good, creative, happy lives. I mean, that's part of our credo, right?
Yeah.
Happiness, life, liberty, and pursuit of. That should be part of the progressive message, right? And how do we put that into effect? And that's the dilemma again. This, you know, instilling fear and divide and conquer and pitting one against each other. That's the politics of fear, which is going to happen. Well, how does one fight back against that? Because that's powerful.
I think through progressive media outlets like this, where one can get on, speak their mind completely freely, not be censored by a corporation, and be restricted to their talking points, like how we see on the mainstream media.
I agree.
So I think that will absolutely have to be a huge part of the platform.
Yeah.
Because how are you going to educate a mass of people on the real issues and the truth of exactly what happens?
You're right.
You know?
You're not getting it really.
You can't.
The politicians aren't certainly doing it. You're not getting it the corporate media, and you're not getting it basically in the academic world.
You can't be for the people and for Wall Street at the same time.
What would Wall Street say to that? So, well, trickle down, right? Supply side economics. We're profiting, but so will the rest. We're just playing devil's advocate for a little bit. I mean, has that ever worked? Has that ever happened? What are the facts behind that? It hasn't. The rich have gotten richer. You have to be a Marxist. I mean, but, you know, the rich have gotten richer and poor have gotten poorer. The game has been that still a sizable percentage of the population has profited from the system. I don't exactly have the percentage, but, you know, say a good third are doing quite well. So you're gonna deal with a lot of resistance too, obviously. People who are profiting and who are comfortable and are unsure of the change that then will happen. And it's very easy to say, well, yeah, vote for Bernie, and he's just going to.
Yeah, I think when
but again, he's got to get that workers' message, the poor, for the poor, the working, and the middle class, and make that very clear that the taxes and the fairness is not going to be taken from that group, that the other side is doing that.
Yeah, and I think once you start talking about like military-industrial complex and how much money is thrown into that, okay, and how much money is available to use for other things, that people aren't going to be so afraid of paying tax, you know, because if we could take that money from the military-industrial complex, which we spend more than the next 8 countries combined, 10 countries combined, okay, if you
15.
Yeah, 15's the real number,
Yeah.
If you take that money and you put it back and reinvest it into infrastructure and your people, you know, I don't think people are going to be afraid of paying higher taxes, because I don't think they're really going to have to that much.
But so many people profit from that system. I mean, over 1 million people work in the prison industrial complex. We've been so socialized to believe in endless wars. That's part of what I played Phil Oakes here. What does it accomplish? And it's a dangerous world out there. The only way to meet that is through strength, militarism, which translates, as it has in our history and others, into imperialism, colonialism, and empire. So that's something Bernie or whoever else is leading the progressive charge has to really come to grips with. And that, I agree with what you're saying, but that, again, is a major, major transformation that needs to happen in the economy. There was a industrial engineer, Seymour Melman, did a lot of work on that. reconverting the war economy back in the 60s also. And I mean, this is the sort of stuff that needs to really happen. But, well, okay, we can't solve everything here all at once here, but the some of the, what do you think about some of the lifestyle issues? Let's say abortion, gay rights. Is that something that will meet a certain resistance by a certain segment of the population at this point, and that progressives just have to realize that there's a certain percentage that they're just not going to be able to really reach it at some point, right?
Yeah, I think, you know, we shouldn't beat around the bush on that. I think so. There's just those people and that specific groups that no matter what you say, you're never going to change their minds.
At least at this point, right?
You know, let's focus on the majority. You know,
that can, right? Okay. And
so I say maybe they'll come on board. You know, maybe they'll see that we're not crazy radical socialists after all, right?
So the real immediate concern right now, again, is to coalition build and get people behind you to support this and endorsing the campaign. And you're pretty clear, seem fairly confident that Bernie is going to come around one way or the other on this, and that there will be a viable, strong, progressive movement.
Yes.
Within the Democratic Party or outside. Is that fair to say?
Yes.
So the real question then becomes, as Naomi Klein's book is just saying, just no is not enough. It's about the yes. What does the progressive agenda offer? What is the yes in all of this?
I think it's, again, back to, you know, what feels right. And
common sense, sort of universal human values, do unto others as they would want them to do unto you. I mean, it's not...
And not being exclusive. You know, we, like I said before, we want everyone to have a seat at the table, whether you want to reform the Democratic Party or you want to start a new party. I think it's important that if you rally around progressive issues, that, you know, the voice should be one. It shouldn't be divided amongst the left. I think it needs to be one, and Draft Bernie is for that.
That's a great point, too, again, because the left does its own, has its own mischief in dividing and conquering itself from that more universal message. Yeah.
And the way we look at it, if you're for progressive values and progressive policy, we want to have a conversation.
Okay. Right. Well, Michael, I mean, this is has been very enlightening, and I'm just so pleased to have met you and to see that you're working so hard and on this movement and with people of your own generation. I think it's absolutely crucial. And last minute or two that we have here, how do we get in touch with you and the movement?
Sure. You could visit first. You can go to draftbernie.org, sign the petition, and then you can go to the volunteers tab. If you'd like to volunteer, you could fill out the form. It'll go to the respective national lead, and then at that point in time, they will divvy it to the state that you live in. And if you happen to live in New York and you want to volunteer, eventually it'll get to me, and we'll reach out to you. And you could also go to Facebook.
You'll be a beacon up in Beacon.
Beacon or Suzanne, my other
for Bernie.
co-lead.
That's sort of a lame. You'll be, yeah. And you're who else could be?
Suzanne Myron. She's in Long Island, and you can get in touch with her as well. And then you go to Facebook, Draft Bernie Facebook page, and then the New York Draft Bernie Facebook page, where we'll have all of our local events. And I just wanted to plug one little event. I have an event July 17th. It'll be at the West Beth Community Center, and we're doing a screening of Awake, Josh Fox's new film.
Yeah.
A Dream from Standing Rock, and we will have a water protector there named Cody Jock from the St. Regis Mohawk tribe, and he's going to talk a little bit about what he went through at Standing Rock and do a Q&A. And so it's going to be a lot of fun.
When is that again now?
July 17th at 7 p.m. at the West Beth Community Center.
Sounds good.
On the west side.
And people can possibly even run, right? Get on the ticket here as you're trying to get this going. Local.
I've certainly been thinking about it.
I think you absolutely should. Absolutely. One last plug. When is you and the band gonna be playing somewhere? You come.
Our next show is, yikes! I'd have to look at my phone, which I don't want to do, but it is in July.
In July, all right. Hey,
it will be in July, and we'll be playing in Beacon.
All right. Well, we'll look forward
to that platform.
Hey.
And you can find me on Facebook, Michael Lucido, and message me if you're interested.
Michael, it's absolutely terrific.
Thanks, Jim.
Good luck, man. Listen, take care. We're going to go out with Immortal Technique. We're going to talk about a fellow musician.
Yeah.
We're going to have his revolutionary lyrics to take us out of the show, and we look forward again to see you next week. This is Jim Vrettos. I'm your host on The Radical Imagination. Thanks for watching.
Immortal Technique. Revolutionary Volume 2. Yeah. Broadcasting live from Harlem, New York. Let the truth be known. You better watch what the fuck flies out of your mouth, or I'ma hijack a plane and fly it into your house. Burn your apartment with your family tied to the couch and slit your throat so when you scream, only blood comes out. I doubt that there could ever be a more wicked MC, cause AIDS-infested child molesters aren't sicker than me. I see the world for what it is, beyond a white and a black. The way the government downplays historical facts, cause the United States sponsored the rise of the Third Reich, just like the CIA trained terrorists how to fight, build bombs and sneak box cutters onto a flight. When I was a child, the devil himself bought me a mic, but I refused to offer, cause God sent me to strike with skills unused like fallopian tubes in a dike. My words will expose George Bush and Bin Laden as two separate parts of the same seven-headed dragon, and you can't fathom the truth, so you don't hear me. You think Illuminati's just a fucking conspiracy theory? That's why conservative racists are all running shit, and your phone is tapped by the federal government. So I'm jamming frequencies in your brain when you speak to me. Technique, a rip a rapper to pieces indecently. Pack weapons illegally, cause I'm never hesitant. Sniper scoping a commission, controlling the president. Father, forgive them, for they don't know right from wrong. The truth is set you free, written down in a song. And the song has the cause of death written in code. The word of God brought to light that'll save your soul. Save your soul, motherfucker. Save your soul. Yeah, yeah, yeah. I hacked the Pentagon for self-incriminating evidence of Republican-manufactured white powder pestilence, Marine Corps flak vest with the guns and ammo, spitting bars like a demon stuck inside a piano, turn a Sambo into a soldier with just one line. So here's the truth about the system that'll fuck up your mind. They gave Al-Qaeda $6 billion in 1989 to 1992, and now the last chapters of Revelations are coming true. And I know a lot of people find it hard to swallow this, cause subliminal bigotry makes you hate my politics, but you act like America wouldn't destroy 2 buildings in a country that was sponsoring bombs dropped on our children. I was watching the towers, and though I wasn't the closest, I saw them crumble to the earth like they were full of explosives, and they thought nobody noticed the news report that they did about the bombs planted on the George Washington Bridge. 4 non-Arabs arrested during the emergency, and then it disappeared from the news permanently. They dubbed the tape of Osama, and they said it was proof. Jealous of our freedom, I can't believe you bought that excuse. Rocking a motherfucking flag don't make you a hero. Word to ground zero, the devil crept into heaven. God overslept on the 7th. The new world order was born on September 11th. Father, forgive them, for they don't know right from wrong. The truth is set you free, written down in a song. And the song has the cause of death written in code. The word of God brought to light that'll save your soul. Save your soul, motherfucker. Save your soul. And just so conservatives don't take it to heart. I don't think Bush did it, cause he isn't that smart. He's just a stupid puppet taking orders on his cell phone from the same people that sabotaged Senator Wellstone. The military industry got it popping and locking, looking for a way to justify the Wolfowitz doctrine. And as a matter of fact, Rumsfeld, now that I think back, without 9/11, you couldn't have a war in Iraq or a defense budget of world conquest proportions. Kill freedom of speech and revoke the right to abortion. Tax cut extortion, a blessing to the wealthy and wicked. But you still have to answer to the Armageddon you scripted. And Dick Cheney, you fucking leech, tell them your plans about building your pipelines through Afghanistan and how Israeli troops train the Taliban in Pakistan. You might have some house niggas fooled, but I understand colonialism is sponsored by corporations. That's why Halliburton gets paid to rebuild nations. Tell me the truth, I don't scare into paralysis. I know the CIA saw Bin Laden on dialysis in '98 when he was top 10 for the FBI. Government ties is really why the government lies. Read it yourself instead of asking the government why, cause then the cause of death will cause the propaganda to die.